Mr. Burton and Miss Edwards, I want to remind you all that John Kennedy, in the week before he was assassinated, made it clear that until when Castro leaves power, when the tyranny ends in Cuba, when there are free elections, everything can change in our relations with that island republic. But until they do, nothing changes. Is there something that you want to change, Donna Edwards?
Well, I think that, today we've seen demonstrated that 50 years of policy with Cuba has been failed on the part of the United States. I mean, I grew up hiding under my desk in kindergarten, and we've had 50 years of failure of policy. It's time to reevaluate, it's time to reassess, and it's time to move toward a path where Cubans can determine their destiny.
So you want to kill Helms-Burton?
Well, I think that Helms-Burton hasn't worked, I mean, it just hasn't worked. Everybody around the world is engaged with Cuba except the United States. And so it's a failed policy for us here in the United States and in the hemisphere, but it's also a failed policy for Cubans. It's time for us to engage with them, one-on-one, to have diplomatic exchanges, to re-engage travel with Cuba so that Cubans themselves can begin to make the transition that inevitably is going to happen.
Congressman Burton, explain Helms-Burton, our current policy toward Cuba.
Well, it's an embargo policy, and it's to keep the pressure on Fidel Castro and now Raul Castro to make positive changes toward democratic institutions down there. That has not happened. They are continuing to be a despotic regime, and under Raul, I anticipate that will go on. We must keep the pressure on them until we see some positive changes toward democracy. Once that happens, I agree with the Democrat candidates and the Republican candidates for president that then we start working with them and help the Cuban people realize their dream of freedom and democracy.
Do we have a debate here, Donna Edwards? Is your belief that Cuba has to move toward democracy before we open the door? Or do you say open the door first to trade and then hope they go democratic?
Well, I think what we do what we've done in other parts of the world, and that is we actually engage with Cuba. Let's engage by traveling. Let's have academics go into Cuba. Let's have businessmen fully engaged in Cuba the way the rest of the world is, and guaranteed there's going to be a transition. I mean, we've seen a historic move just here today with a peaceful succession in Cuba, and we're going to see more progress.
If free trade with Cuba brings democracy, why hasn't it worked with the rest of the world trading with Cuba? It doesn't seem to have moved them away from tyranny, has it?
Well, I think that what's happened with Cuba is that the United States actually needs to be more engaged and not less engaged. I mean, it's a good thing when U.S. academics are traveling back and forth to and from Cuba. It's a good thing when our lawmakers are able to travel to Cuba, as I have, and seen firsthand what's going on the ground in Cuba. The best thing that we can do right now in this hemisphere is to actually engage.
Congressman Burton, why do you think Cubans on the island still support the Castro brothers? What is it that allows that lock on those people to continue?
Well, I don't think they do support Castro. I don't think they supported Fidel or Raul. That is a communist regime where they have block captains who watch everybody in each individual block, and anybody that even speaks out against the government ends up in a gulag. Thousands and thousands of Cubans who want freedom and democracy have been in those communist gulags for a long, long time, and many of them have been shot. Fidel Castro and Raul have even killed friends of theirs who they thought might want some positive change down there. Cuba is still a terrorist nation. According to the State Department of the United States, they still advocate and try to export revolution as they did under Che Guevara. They're working with Mr. Chavez, President Chavez of Venezuela, to continue the despotic regime down there. And that's why the United States of America needs to keep the pressure on them and help the people of Cuba who really want freedom and democracy to get what they want.
But what about the fact that Castro for years has used the specter of Uncle Sam coming at him as his excuse for tyranny, basically? He has to repress the people because they got to defend themselves against us. Hasn't that been his PR all along?
Well, it may have been worldwide, but he didn't need any reason to repress his people. He is a communist.
No, but an excuse to do it. I know he doesn't need one. He's a communist. But why hasn't he used that as his excuse? The fact that we're coming to get him.
He didn't need an excuse. He used that to try to change the world's attitude toward him. But the fact is, anybody that's watched Cuba, anybody that's watched Fidel and Raul Castro, knows he's a hardcore communist. He tried to send revolution into Africa. He's done it in Central and South America. And he's a bad apple, and so is Raul. The people down there, I believe, do want positive change. I do believe they want democracy and freedom. And I think if we keep the pressure on, it will happen. Raul, as a matter of fact, is starting to move very slowly in that direction.
Ms. Edwards, if you get into Congress, what would you do on Cuba?
Well, I mean, I support the efforts of the Cuba Working Group. It's a bipartisan working group of more than 100 members of the House of Representatives that actually just yesterday called for a reassessment of Cuba policy, and I think that's what we have to do. And we need to reestablish relations with Cuba around issues of travel, even family travel, so that we can begin to open up a process where Americans have dialogue with Cubans on the ground. So when that real transition happens after Raul, and it will indeed happen, that we have some people on the ground here in the United States and in Cuba who understand really what's going on the island, and Cubans can make their own determination about their economic and their political future.
Well, I want to thank you both and salute you both for a very civil discussion.